We're at the dawn of a new era of television. The launch of digital TV is the biggest event since the invention of colour.
It all began in 1998 with the launch of Sky Digital, a new revolution in satellite TV. The deal was simple: cough up a huge pot of cash and get a fancy TV dish hooked up to your house in exchange for years of entertainment. Not only did you get access to a wider variety of channels at the push of a button, but also a whole package of other features you couldn't get anywhere else. You could buy brand new movies on Sky Box Office, watch up to 4 tedious sports at the same time, listen to a billion different genres of dad music, and waste hours of your life searching through the TV guide to see what was on Cartoon Network next Thursday. Yes, TV was changing, and the key word was interactive. At that time, everything was interactive. Interactive this, interactive that. The channels were interactive, the service was interactive, and I'm hyper-interactive just thinking about it. Gone were the days of just lounging on the sofa, soaking up whatever trash the TV wanted to cram into your brain. Now you could take control of your snazzy new Sky remote and get involved with just about anything. This was TV of the future. Just press the interactive button and Sky would whisk you away to a magical universe of convenience. You could go shopping, send emails, book holidays, buy ringtones for your knackered old Nokia, play the lottery, check your bank balance, and then blow your entire life savings at the virtual casino. When I first discovered this as a 5-year-old in 2001, I thought it was amazing. You could spend hours just looking at half this stuff. Actually, it's still kind of amazing just how much you could do with your TV remote back then. I think one of my favourite things to do was ordering Domino's pizza. With Sky, you could just place an order with your remote and get it delivered straight to your door. They always used to make it look so bright and colourful, even though the design changed a bit over the years. Like, who's this guy? He's having a good time, isn't he? This used to make me so hungry staring at all those big pizzas and side dishes. What I wouldn't give for early 2000s chicken dunkers and hanky-panky pie. That's a deep cut. Even looking at this now, it makes my stomach rumble for pizza. The only problem is that it was so expensive, you'd be lucky if you got to use this service once every 6 months, no matter how much you nagged your parents. I was so pathetic back then. Whenever I get hungry, I used to pretend to make pizza orders with the remote without actually paying for anything at the end. What a loser. Yeah, I definitely had a twitchy remote finger back then when it came to Sky, but they made it so easy to use. It started the legend of the red button. So many channels would advertise it. Just press that red button and start flicking through the interactive section looking for the next weird thing to gawk at. Actually, one thing I enjoyed was the adverts. Around that time in 2002, they really went all out on making the interactive service look as cool as possible, turning the red button on the remote into an actual mascot character, a crazy CGI rock star known only as the Red Button Man.
I'm your little red button, babe. You know, we're gonna get on fine. I can get what you need. Come on, push my button, babe.
I love this guy. I'd actually go to the customer channel and watch the ads loop over and over again just because I found them so entertaining. It was such a fun way of showing off all those funky features that Sky had to offer.
If you want to get interactive, play games, send messages, shop or bank, just press your red button. Go on, touch me, I rock.
But weirdly, they also used the Red Button Man as a mascot for Foxtel, the Australian version of Sky, and they redubbed his voice.
I'm your little red button, babe. You know, we're gonna get on fine.
This is horrifying. It's like some kind of demented parallel universe.
Get more from your new sport or weather, man, just press your red button. Go on, touch me, I rock.
Well, despite the many interactive features on Sky, I think it's safe to say we know the best one of them all. The video games. Yeah, who needs a PS2 when you can play games with your Sky remote? Anyone who's nostalgic for this time will instantly recognize this. It's like the universal language of early 2000s childhood. So how did all this get started? Well, Sky's original interactive service was called Open, which first launched in July 1999 with a modest selection of games. Actually, all these games were free at the time, so it didn't cost you a thing to play them. I suppose the only catch is that you had to watch some ads while you waited for the games to load, like ordering the VHS of Pokemon the First Movie from Woolworths. That's such a modern day concept delivered in such an old way. Yeah, there was a lot of advertising, but that's no different from the internet either. I know I'd rather look at a flat image listening to the buzz of the TV signal, rather than any of the trashy ads we've had over the last however many years. Still, Open Games was fairly basic in terms of presentation, since it was more like a small section of the wider open service at the time. Towards 2001 though, it became its own dedicated service, with this really cool attic set that has a solid place in my memory. It's a fitting analogy, really. This whole video is like going up to the attic and extracting dusty memories from the back of your mind. There was something very cozy about this, with the sunlight streaming in through the window and the charming cartoon spider giving you all the latest info. It felt so warm and inviting. I have so many fond memories of looking through all these games and waiting for them to load. This screen right here, this is just burned into my brain. And they just couldn't help themselves with that Domino's pizza ad, could they? It was like a big tease, seriously. But on October 1st, 2001, the attic was sealed up, and Open Games closed down to make way for a brand new service, Sky GameStar. This might be the most well-known version for people who grew up during this time. It was bright, vibrant, and just put you in a gaming mood. The only problem is that by now, Sky wasn't feeling so charitable about letting customers play their games for free, and decided they could make even more profit by charging you to play them instead. This is where their pay-to-play scheme came in, and let me tell you, whenever I'd see this logo on any of the games, my heart would sink, because it meant hours of begging your parents and promising to be good if only they'd just let you buy one game of Tetris. Back then, it cost 60p to buy a game for 24 hours, which doesn't seem like that much, but to my parents, it was like asking them to buy me a solid gold Rolls Royce. But no matter how many tantrums I threw, my parents rarely ever let me pay for the games, so most of the time you just had to play the demo, which would usually only be the first level of the game, or sometimes just an automated video. That's why I always liked using Sky over my grandparents' house, because they didn't have a clue how this stuff worked, and they'd say yes to anything. "What's that? You wanna play a game, sonny? Go on, boy." Sky GameStar changed its look a couple times over the years, adopting more of a rainbow colour scheme, with the games being shown off in greater detail, and each selection having its own video or flashy animation. The selection of games just kept growing as well, with no end of choice, and it felt like Sky had acquired just about every license in existence. There were games based on movies, games based on TV shows, games based on TV channels, games based on cartoons, games based on Disney, games based on board games based on game shows, and even games based on games. It was insane. To tell you the truth, I'm not even sure just how many games there were during the lifespan of this service. It could have been well over 1,000 for all I know. Sky was not messing around. Actually, Sky was so confident about taking over the gaming industry that they even released a special controller in 2003 just for playing the TV games, the Sky Gamepad. This thing is really bizarre. It has one of the most perplexing button layouts I've ever seen, and amazingly, these controllers were wireless, though they required their own receiver, so they wouldn't interfere with the actual Sky remote. They even released the controller in a double pack, since some of the games had support for up to 4 players. I had no idea this existed back then. Whenever I'd see the controller icon on some of the games, I just thought it signified, ooh, it's a game! So this is completely alien to me, but if I had known about it, I would have been all over this thing back then. Now, with all that in mind, you'd think that Sky would have their sights set on buying up Sony and Nintendo, but towards the mid-2000s, things started to go a bit south for Sky GameStar. Gradually, use of the service was beginning to decline, and Sky GameStar closed down on December 6th, 2006, before it eventually rebranded itself again as just plain old Sky Games.
You know you want to.
After a few months of downtime, Sky Games launched on April 4th, 2007, with a significantly blander pink and white look. For me, I always felt there was something unimaginative about this, and even though I'd still play a game every now and then, it lacked the spark it used to have. It seemed to have less care and attention put into it. Even the ad for the service didn't actually show any of the games.
Sky Games is a brand new service that lets you play the world's best word, puzzle, card and action games online and on interactive TV.
It all felt a bit desperate, especially with how much they kept plugging the day pass, so you could play many of the games for 24 hours. It was like they were begging for people to come back. but it didn't feel like anyone was biting, and over the years, Sky Games just felt like it was in limbo, a curiosity that you were amazed still existed on the odd occasion you checked out the interactive section. Nothing was being updated that much, with games of shows that weren't even on TV anymore still having a presence on the service, and overall, it felt like the whole thing was on autopilot until its inevitable demise, when Sky Games finally closed down for good on January 31st, 2015, after over 15 years of operation. It's sad that the story of these games has to end on such a sour note, but fortunately, that's what we have our memory banks for, to relive the glory days when TV games were at the top of the food chain. And now that all the history is out of the way, let's look back on some of the games themselves. However, since these games were transmitted through your phone line and not stored on the hard drive of the Sky Digibox, it means that they're pretty difficult to find clips of. It's not like an old video game where you can just buy it from eBay or find an emulator. So, for many years, all of these games were thought to be lost to time. Now, that has changed in recent years, but more on that soon enough. So, for now, let's look back on the lost games that exist in video form only. Going back to the original Open Games era, I can't think of a better way to start than with my personal favourite, Beehive Bedlam. This was easily the most famous of all the Sky games, and the one that most people remember, since it was the only game to survive for the entire history of the service. Most of the time you didn't even have to pay for this one, so it's no wonder it became such a beloved game. The gameplay is enjoyably simple. You play as a bee blasting coloured flowers at other coloured flowers to match up the colours and clear the screen before time runs out. It doesn't sound like much, but that's really the point. It's a game that anyone can pick up and play without any skill required. Even now it's still a lot of fun, and actually quite addictive shooting all those flowers. Beyond that, I think what makes this one extra memorable is the feel of the game. There's something very peaceful and relaxing about it. The bees are doing just fine, and the sun is smiling away. It's like a breath of fresh air. The art style is incredibly charming, and the music is iconic. Any kid who grew up with Sky back then has to remember it, even though the music was actually quite different when the game was first released. I remember both themes actually, so no wonder my memory would get so confused. Sky definitely extracted all the honey they could out of this game, using it to promote special competitions, like winning a DVD player, and even a Christmas version where the bees are dressed up as Santa. How can you not love that? This game is full of great memories for me. Whenever you were slumped on the sofa, bored out of your mind with nothing good to watch, you could always stick on Beehive Bedlam and while away the hours zapping those flowers. Even though Beehive Bedlam lasted for such a long time, at one point in 2004, Sky was actually considering scrapping the game and replacing it with a whole new version, which would have been horrendous. It looks like a horrible Flash knockoff, so good thing they decided to stick with the classic version we all know and love. Now, this game isn't truly lost, since it was resurrected by Sky for their modern-day TV service in 2020, but it's not quite the same thing. It's more like you play it off to the side while you're watching TV. However, there is a very faithful fan recreation online that definitely captures that nostalgic feeling. It's well worth playing, and long may the Hive continue to thrive. Bumble Tumble. If you want to talk about lost games, then we have to get into Bumble Tumble. This was probably my other favourite Sky game, but sadly, it's completely lost media, with no surviving clips outside of one tiny screenshot. I used to play this game all the time. From what I recall in the depths of my memory, you played as a bee rescuing other bees around each level, and once you picked up all the bees, you could move on to the next stage. This is one of the very few games I actually managed to beat. I think the classroom level shown in the screenshot was the first level, followed by a hospital level from what I remember, and the final level, I think, was the beehive, where you rescued the queen bee at the end, but that's a very fuzzy recollection, and hopefully a clip of this game will resurface someday to confirm my dusty memory. If you ever find out more about this one, do let me know in the comments. Card games. There were also a bunch of card games as well, like Perfect Match or 11s, an exciting game all about two guys getting up to leave the casino. I never really liked these that much. Card games just weren't my thing, although I did like the casino imagery. Speaking of gambling, there was also technically another game service called Sky Bet, only this was where you would gamble real money. My parents would have killed me if I'd gone anywhere near this, so I always stayed far away from it. I was actually scared that if I so much as pressed the Sky Bet button by accident, I would have instantly drained my parents' bank account. Unbelievable. Fathom. Fathom was another famous game in the early era where you had to guide a submarine through each level while avoiding certain obstacles. I remember this being very difficult though, and it used to drive me crazy. I had to ask my dad for help a lot with this one. I don't think I ever finished it. There was also a sequel called Fathom 2, which I imagine was twice as tough. King Tooty. I definitely remember this one. This was my dad's favourite game back then. You're an explorer running around a tomb, trying to escape from mummies. I suppose it's similar to Pac-Man, except unlike Pac-Man, you have to stop the mummies by dropping cheese sandwiches. Even all these years later, I still remember that just because it's so bizarre. Who came up with that? Cheese sandwiches! They were just having a laugh. Well, it's pretty funny. Pipe Mania. Pipe Mania is another lost game, so all we have is the icon on the menu screen with this amusing pipe mascot. I played this one a lot though, where you have to put the various pipes in the right order. It's a shame no more clips exist of this game, but hey, I guess that's what Candy Machine Deluxe was for. Arcade games. Moving on to the later era of Sky GameStar, there were a ton of games based on some arcade favourites around this time, mostly from the likes of Atari. You had Asteroids, Bust a Move, Centipede, Space Invaders, and of course, Tetris. They all ran more or less like their original versions from what I remember, which is the least you could expect for primitive TV game technology. I think I remember Bust a Move the best. Something about those sounds just takes me right back. Banzai Pinball. This was one of the weirdest games, based on a strange Channel 4 show that has probably vanished into the black hole of memory loss. I didn't even know about it at the time, I just assumed it was some kind of wacky Channel 4 pinball game, but I used to play this one over and over again. It's all the fun of pinball, but with wacky sound clips.
Come on, we don't have all day. Lovely.
I still don't get it. Big Brother. I wasn't lying when I said that Sky had the license to everything. Apparently, someone thought it was a genius idea to make a game based on a tacky reality show, and this is the result. A complete rip-off of Pac-Man. You're a contestant racing around the Big Brother house, picking up pellets. But instead of ghosts, you're being chased by cameras instead. Get it? Because Big Brother's watching you? Oh. Amazingly, there were at least 3 multiple versions of this game, but it seems they're all the same thing. One thing I do like is that as you clear each area, you get to see more and more of the house, which was quite cool at the time. I'll admit that I used to play this one a lot, but do you want to know the real reason why? Because it had the cool theme music. Yeah, board games. In case you couldn't be bothered to just dig out the board games from under the bed, then Sky had you covered with these as well. Old school favourites like Connect 4, Cluedo, and Monopoly were all lovingly recreated through the magic of Sky. Again though, I didn't tend to play these that much. Why bother with a video board game when you could just play, you know, the real board game? Denki Blocks. This one is actually named after the developer, Denki, a Scottish company who made their name by developing hundreds of these Sky games. If you can name one of these games, then it was probably made by Denki. I guess they owned the monopoly on this industry back then. It's a fairly simple game, where you have to get the colour blocks to connect with each other. This was a pretty addictive one, and sometimes I put it on just to listen to the music. Very soothing. Graham Norton Volleyball. Probably the stupidest idea for a game ever. Why base a game on a movie or a TV show when you can just base it on a TV chat show presenter instead? It doesn't even make any sense to me. Like, is Graham Norton known for being a big fan of volleyball? Well, the game gives you what you want. It's 2D volleyball on the beach, with Graham Norton making the odd grunt every now and then.
Oh.
Channel 4 must have been desperate when they came up with this. It might actually be the worst Sky game of all time. What disturbs me is that on the Sky GameStar menu, it was listed right above a decent license like Ed, Edd and Eddy. Now that's a disturbing thought. Scuzzboarding. As a snowboarding fan growing up, I was desperate to play this one. It just looks so cool and grungy. I begged and begged my parents to let me pay to play, and they finally gave in. I was so pumped, I actually invited one of my friends over to watch me play it. What a dork. But even though I expected some kind of radical snowboarding game, instead you're just sliding from left to right in a half-pipe to avoid obstacles and pits. I think there were games like this you could play on your mobile phone back then. It seems primitive now, but in my mind back then, it felt like I was playing SSX, so I have a soft spot for this one. Sky Sports. Speaking of sports, there were also a host of games based on Sky Sports, the overpriced channel package that nobody could resist. I always hated football, so it's safe to say I never had much of a taste for David Beckham soccer, probably the worst football game of all time, and the Sky Sports batting challenge is one challenge I didn't accept. Seeing this again is like a flashback to when I'd mess around with the Sky remote and get trapped inside the Sky Sports menus by accident and not know how to get out. Ugh. I kind of remember the golf game though, since sometimes my dad would play it on a rainy afternoon, but there's no music and barely any sound. It's just boring, and I think it would benefit from having a proper golfing soundtrack.
Y'all gon' make me lose my mind. Up in here, up in here.
There was also a slightly better golf game called Crazy Golf as well, and on Nickelodeon, I remember there being a fun red button game called Bin Weevil's Golf, based on a set of obscure cartoon shorts from the time. Let's see if that tweaks anyone's memory. Trivial Pursuit. Based on the board game of course, but being only 6 at the time, I couldn't answer any of these questions. Still, I used to play this a lot just for the music, which always made me feel inquisitive and thoughtful. It was like I got to fake being smart just by booting this up. There were also lots of other quizzes on Sky as well, like movie trivia, sports trivia, and so on. It seems a good quiz is just something you can't escape. V-Birds. Yeah, I can't believe it either. Even the V-Birds had their own Sky game. A failed cartoon band that couldn't even top the music charts, never mind getting people to play their game. What makes it even weirder is that it's based on V-Birds Perfect, a piece of lost media that barely anyone remembers. Probably the only case in existence where the game adaptation survives, but the original show is lost. It's just a basic rhythm game, where you play as one member of the band and press the colour buttons in time to the music. I'm sure it must have been great fun dancing to all, one of their songs. Let's take an interlude for a moment to talk about another game service that was also available on Sky, Play Jam. Launching in 1999, this acted as a rival to Sky's range of games, which was also available on other TV services like NTL and TeleWest. Much like Sky, I used to play games here sometimes as well, not quite as much, but I used to flick back and forth between the two an awful lot. I always liked the name for one thing, Play Jam. It used to make me think of games and jam. There was something yummy about it to my 6-year-old brain. I think Play Jam was aimed at a slightly older audience, since the tone was a bit edgier, with a weird surreal art style. Using Play Jam always felt like watching a B-grade Cartoon Network show, like Fat Dog Mendoza or Robot Boy. Some of the games were more adult-based as well, with very strange licensed titles, like Celebrity Deathmatch from MTV, or the horror movie 8-Legged Freaks. Why would anyone want to make a game out of this? It's just Space Invaders with spiders. It's like they just decided to grab whatever license they could get their jammy hands on. Play Jam always felt a bit sketchier as well, since not only did you have to pay 50p to play each game for the day, but every level also ended with a massive competition with a premium rate phone number. Win a PS2, win a Game Boy Advance, anything to get you to call that number and waste £1 a minute. How jammy. There were some decent games though, like BitBot, another Space Invaders knockoff, and this squid one with sound effects that still trigger me. There was also a lost game called Smash Twins, which was a fantastic round of ice hockey. I also vividly recall messing around with video poker, even though I didn't have a clue what any of these buttons did. I just liked pressing them. I mean, I was that stupid kid who would just go mashing the buttons on actual fruit machines in real life, so go figure. I'm not quite sure when Play Jam stopped being available on Sky, but apparently in later years, it did become a bit more family friendly, with Jetix even having some games on the service in 2005. Honestly, I had no clue about this at the time, but there were some classics, like Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, and Sonic X Bowling? Well, if the Sky games represent happy childhood memories, then Play Jam was more like a disturbing fever dream. Whenever I played it, I felt like I just walked into a smoky pub full of maniacs or something, so it's probably best we get out of here before I get a Play Jam hangover. Now, I did mention before that since Sky Games shut down in 2015, many of these games are no longer available to play. But what if I told you that some of them were available to play? Well, beginning in 2023, a wide variety of those old Sky games have now been archived and preserved by Denki, the company who developed so many of the games. Yes, after countless years of being abandoned by history, you can now play some of these Sky classics on your PC. Not all of them, of course, but it's certainly a start, and we have to be grateful to Denki for being so generous with sharing their archive. This is the nostalgia fix we need in our lives. So, for the first time in many, many years, it's time to play through a selection of these old games firsthand and see how they stack up today. Avatar Jumble Fever. First of all, this is really weird doing this. I feel like I'm breaking the laws of time or something. I don't know what dark magic they had to perform to get these games to work properly on a PC, but it's glorious. Anyway, this is obviously a game based on the Nickelodeon show, and for something as highly regarded as Avatar, you'd think they put a lot of effort into making an exciting game. You were wrong. Yeah, this is just a bland puzzle game where you're mixing up elemental symbols, and there's no real connection to the show, outside of just having pictures of the characters. Apparently they did this a lot, with games like Tom and Jerry Jumble Fever, Cartoon Network Jumble Fever, and Gadget Boy Jumble Fever. It was a complete scam, and this is an insult to Avatar. I bet even they think it's a rip-off. I mean, look at his face, he knows it's funny. Ben 10, Vilgax Venom. Basically, an evil JPEG of Vilgax is on the loose, and it's up to Ben to stop him. Like the show, you can turn into different aliens, which is pretty cool, like Heat Blast, or my personal favourite, Cannonbolt. Look at him go. But it's just your basic beat 'em up. There's not much to it outside of squashing the enemies, and there's no theme song either. Disappointing. Carol Vorderman's Mind Aerobics, truly one of my all-time favourite game series. Apparently endorsed by Carol Vorderman from Countdown, it's a puzzle game that calculates your BFI, or Brain Fitness Index, with a bunch of different brain teasers, like picking out the odd colour in a certain sequence, or replicating the pathway of a dot. Surprisingly, this is quite engaging, and the puzzles are fun. I really got into it. But I only scored 45.2, which I guess confirms I'm an idiot. Sorry, Carol. Codename Kids Next Door. Oh yes, Cartoon Network had a lot of Sky games. This is a side-scroller where you play as number 4, trying to rescue your friends from the pirates by going in and out of doors looking for keys. Strangely, this reminds me of Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle on the Game Boy from back in the day. It's hard to know where you're going though, and it's pretty boring without any music, hardly as exciting as the show. Courage the Cowardly Dog, Cats Kidnap. As the title would suggest, that creepy cat Cats has kidnapped Courage's owners, and he has to explore a haunted house to find them. This is more like a top-down game. You have to search furniture for items such as keys and weapons you can use to take on the monsters, like this bug spray. A lot of these games are like mazes though, so once again, it's difficult to know exactly where you're supposed to go. And where's the Cats theme? Sky Sports Darts. Certainly a basic game. It starts, but surprisingly engaging for what it is. You just time your throw and hurl the darts. I still went bust though. How come we never got a bullseye game? Dexter's Lab, Dexter vs Mandark. Mandark has taken over Dexter's lab and built robot versions of Dee Dee that fire lasers to get rid of him for good. That's pretty bizarre. Dexter has to fight through his lab and build gadgets to succeed, but this is a fairly slow-moving game. Dexter walks at less than a mile an hour, and even when you get the jetpack, it's not much faster. Not only that, but every time you enter another room, you get interrupted by a loading screen. It's more like playing a game about loading than it is about Dexter. Ed, Edd and Eddy, Night of the Living Ed. This is more like it, one of my all-time favourite cartoons, and just get a load of that classic theme song. Ugh. I have to say, I like the help section for this game, which plays out like a conversation between Eddie and Double D. I can just imagine Eddie telling me to contact Sky Interactive if I have any concerns about the game. So you play as Eddie, trying to stop Ed from rampaging around the cul-de-sac as a monster, a reference to one of the banger episodes of the show, even though this monster Ed bears no resemblance to the one in that episode, and Eddie would actually be trying to milk this situation for lots of cash. This one isn't too bad. You collect jawbreakers to trade for gadgets from Double D, like a big water pistol. I don't remember Eddie ever having that kind of firepower in the show. The pacing feels better in this game too. Somehow, exploring the open neighbourhood is just more fun than skulking around Dexter's lab. A decent effort. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, TikTok Terror. Another classic show, but I won't be able to sleep after hearing this nightmare version of the theme song. Evil imaginary friends are running loose at Foster's, and Blue has to take them down. You won't believe this, but the gameplay is virtually identical to the Ed, Edd and Eddy game, except you're collecting eggs instead of jawbreakers. Denki did this a lot back then, constantly remaking the same type of games, just with different character sprites. Actually, it reminds me of the Ed, Edd and Eddy episode, where they just keep reskinning the same game over and over again.
We'll just tweak the scam a little. They won't know what hit them.
Maybe they were warning us about Sky games all along. Golden Balls! This is a game where you've gotta have the balls. Golden Balls, that is. This one is based on an ITV game show that I used to watch all the time after school. This was like my tea time for 2 years. I'll probably save the big game show memory video for another time, but basically you had to grab your balls and lie about how much money was inside so you wouldn't get voted off. If you do get voted off, you have to bin your balls and seek medical advice from the nearest hospital. There's no Jasper Carrot in this game, but we do get 3 identical contestants, all with different hairstyles. There is something deeply disturbing about this. Surprisingly, it does play out like the real show, except you have to answer a question now and then to increase your trust rating. I actually did manage to get to the end and rack up a bit of money, but Tyler stole my balls away from me and ran off with all the cash. I'll get him next time for that. Hulk. A game based on the 2003 Ang Lee movie of all things. Alongside Bumble Tumble, I think this is the only other Sky game I ever managed to complete. As you might expect, you play as the big green meanie Hulk, trying to stop the man from bringing you down. You just punch people and throw stuff, and it's actually pretty fun to see the enemies flying across the screen, and unlike most of these games, there's music through the whole thing. I thought this was some kind of amazing action game back in the day, but it quickly becomes repetitive. You fight your way through 15 levels across 3 zones, the desert, the city, and the forest, and the last level feels like it goes on forever. I don't know how I had the patience to finish this as a kid. I wasted a whole Saturday afternoon playing through this thing, but back then, you had to do it all in one sitting. You see, if you paid to play one of these games, then you couldn't just leave and go back to the TV channels. Oh no! If you did that, your money was completely wasted, and you couldn't play again without paying for another go. And let me tell you, the amount of times I pressed the wrong button on the remote by accident and lose all my game progress was just infuriating. But I just had to beat this one again for posterity. Wow, I just finished a Sky game 22 years after it came out. What a result. Looney Tunes back in action. Okay, I do like this movie, but I can't believe they made a Sky game out of this, and I can't believe I still remember it. It's all coming back to me now. You play as Bugs Bunny exploring Area 52, but in hindsight, the gameplay is identical to Courage the Cowardly Dog. Even the enemies move in the same way. You can switch between Bugs and Daffy, but it doesn't seem to alter the gameplay much. It's putting me to sleep just thinking about it. More like Looney Tunes' lack of action. Pac-Man, and yep, it's Pac-Man, the arcade game we all know and love. It's fairly well animated, and the funky remix theme is great. Can't complain. But wait, why are you being chased by ghosts instead of cameras? This is such a rip-off of Big Brother. Powerpuff Girls, Mojo for Mayor. Apparently, this is some kind of fan reconstruction of a lost game, so I couldn't imagine how they did this, but it's certainly interesting. It's like a top-down space shooter, where you're going around Townsville as Blossom, shooting lasers at steaks. Yup. Robot Boy. Everyone's favourite Cartoon Network show when it's 2 in the morning and you just want the insomnia to end. It's the same old thing. Side-scroller, rescue your friends, blah blah blah. Quite a slow generic platformer, and it doesn't make that much difference when you upgrade to Super Robot Death Mode. But one thing I will say, at least it's better than the games the kids had to play in Robot Boy and the Island of Doom. Scooby-Doo, The Mystery of Eerie Isle. There might have been more Scooby-Doo games on Sky than anything else, but this one is sadly another snooze fest. You play as Scooby and Shaggy searching a haunted house for clues, but it's slow, dull, and the only real joy is going in and out of different doors, just like that gag in the show. Next game. SpongeBob Bikini Bottom Bother. Strangely, this is actually based on the movie, so what's up with the title? It doesn't really follow the plot of the movie though, since apparently Karen has had her crown stolen. Interesting interpretation. Well, you'll never guess, but it's another standard side-scroller. It's slow, there's no atmosphere, and no enemies to fight. Just SpongeBob with all the fun sucked out. Super Breakout. This is a very nostalgic one for me. I was pretty addicted to this game, and that colourful title screen is like a burst of memories. At the time, those ships used to remind me of sweets, like Quality Street or something. I don't know. Well, this is nothing more than the classic game Breakout, just with a very shiny sheen. It's still fun to play, and you get that funky music too. Classic. The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Yet another game where you're stuck inside a haunted house. It's pretty similar to a lot of those other Cartoon Network games, except here there's a bit more teamwork involved, with both Billy and Mandy having to work together to flick switches, so there's at least some originality here. It's just a shame there isn't a third option where you can slash things up with Grim's scythe. Thunderbirds. Yes, a game based on the 2004 live-action movie that nobody saw. You have to rocket around as Thunderbird 1, saving people with some of the worst controls ever devised for a video game. I have no idea how you were supposed to do this with a Sky Remote. It's so sluggish, and if you hit the walls too many times, your rocket blows up. Good. Tom and Jerry Dynamite. There were plenty of Tom and Jerry TV games, and this is just a taster. You play as Jerry, using bombs to blow up bushes and enemies to escape from a garden maze. It's a fairly tedious game, since most of the time, you're just waiting for the bombs to work. What a shame this time period came too late for them to make a Sky game out of the Tom and Jerry movie. Now that's a game I would have paid to play. Tomb Raider. Yeah, you'll never believe this, but even a modern day console game like Tomb Raider got the Sky treatment, with multiple chapters no less. This is another game that's sadly been lost, but this is one faithful fan recreation. It's a very ambitious idea for its time, translating the 3D adventures of Lara Croft into a 2D side-scroller, where you have to climb, jump and roll your way through the tombs. As a PS2 owner at the time, I found this fascinating back then, but this was a very difficult game to get through, no matter how many times I tried to beat it. Every level was like a never-ending maze, and somehow I always ended up falling and impaling myself on the spikes. Not much has changed. Who wants to be a millionaire? Okay, one last game for the road, based on the classic game show. It's pretty much what you would expect it to be, except you're answering questions for points instead of pounds, and there is a clock, which, funnily enough, is what would end up ruining the show the first time around. There's no music or Chris Tarrant either, which kind of kills the mood dead. All you get is this throbbing heartbeat noise. I did get up to 32,000 before blowing it though, so I guess all those brain aerobics did pay off after all. And I even qualified for the mind-blowing top prize draw of £32. It must be my lucky day. Well, I think that's enough Sky games for now. I really do feel like I've just fallen through some kind of time portal doing this. It's such a trippy experience just to dive into all the history, but to actually play the games again after all these years of being away from them? That's a whole new level. It's a shame the charm of TV gaming isn't really a thing anymore, but I suppose video games have simply moved on since then, even though I think the various interactive services of Sky actually paved the way for the many convenient ways we use the internet today. It might seem like a thing of the past, but it was actually ahead of its time. It's good to see that these things haven't been entirely forgotten though, and with many of the games being restored to a playable state in recent years, I hope it's just a matter of time before we're playing Bumble Tumble and Pipe Mania on our PC screens once again. But if not, at least we'll always have the memories of all the fun we could have with our little red button man. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to my secret attic to order a Domino's pizza and play some Beehive Bedlam. Thanks for watching, and look out for more reviews coming soon.